Most Audi models will get a S variant, sportier than the regular A one, but not quite as aggressive and performance-oriented as the RS. Look at the A3, S3, RS3, A5, S5, RS5, A7, S7, RS7. While the RS models are a little more rare and limited, it seems most Audi models will get the S version, like this, the Audi S7, which is essentially the same thing as the S6, just in a sexier body. Remember, the A7 and A6 are essentially the same car, mechanicals, everything there, just different styling. And for this generation of the Audi S7, it has gone to a twin-turbo V6, a 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 that makes 444 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque. It is shared with the Audi RS5 and RS4. Sadly, we don't get the RS4 Avant here in America. I really wish we did. But you'll also note that that's a little bit less power than the outgoing generation. The previous S7 and S6 had a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 making 450 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. So while this is a little bit down on horsepower, it does increase the torque output. Still quattro all-wheel drive, obviously, and this now has an 8-speed torque converter automatic, whereas the previous generation had a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds for the S7. How much more power does it make than the regular A7? Well, it's a 109 horsepower increase and 74 pound-feet of torque. So the S model definitely has a substantial power output increase versus the regular A model. For the 2024 model year, we have some very subtle changes for the S7. There's a new honeycomb design front grille, slight changes to the rear fascia, but it's essentially carryover. So the same body style, the lighting and tech and things like that. This one here is finished in a pretty cool shade of Chronos Gray Metallic. We have the 21-inch wheels, the black optics package, which blacks out the mirror and trim and things like that, but has always confused me why it doesn't have the blacked out badges. I've ordered cars before I had black optics on it, but then I had to go buy the black badges and replace them before. So Audi, why isn't all the badges black for a black optics car? Regardless, let's grab the camera. We're going to get up close. I'll show you some details on the S7. We'll do an interior tour and take it for a quick drive. Let's take a quick tour of the S7. So we have the modern Audi key here, lock, unlock, double tap to open the trunk, and then the S logo on the other side. And check this out, one of my favorite parts of the new lighting. When you unlock, the welcome sequence on the DRLs, so cool on the new gen A7, S7, and RS7. We have the updated front grille here, like this blacked out honeycomb style. This does have the black optics pack, but you see the regular silver front rings. And also, it's just an S badge now. It doesn't say S7. Usually I'm used to seeing the actual S7, S6, S5, S4, but it's just an S badge right there. This one also has the laser headlights option. You can see that little blue piece inside there, and also there's a little yellow warning sticker. And then a slightly more aggressive and sporty front fascia. Not quite as much as the RS7, but more than the regular A7. Riding on 21-inch wheels here. We've got upgraded brakes, the blacked out mirrors, and the trim surround. Also, you get frameless windows on the A7, S7 models there. Soft closed doors. I love this angle, the shoulder line on the 7 family vehicle, right? As it curves down there, that sport back. Big fan of that. This little rear wing will actuate out. We have the big light bar in the back. And then the S7 badge, again, why is it silver? It should be blacked out, right? Quad exhaust tips down here. And it doesn't really look functional, that diffuser. It looks more like sporty trim, but definitely leaning towards the sportier look. The S7 already looks sportier than the regular sedan S6, same thing A7 and the A6. We have the S logo here on the door sill. We have the S7 branded all-weather mats. These seats don't have the typical stitched diamond pattern for the S model because they're the alternate option ones with the massage and ventilation and so forth. They still have some cool stitching on them. They're very, very comfortable. And I was happy this had massage seats because I was driving this a lot this week. We've got carbon trim. This is like the textured one, right? So it's like the dry carbon finish. It doesn't have the glossy smooth finish over it. And it's very familiar if you've been in a modern Audi. The virtual cockpit, the stacked double touchscreens there. Steering wheel has the S model there. It's not flat bottom here. It is heated. We have a mix of that glossy black trim and more of that carbon fiber, the Quattro logo right there, and the latest Audi MMI screens, which get rid of the rotary knob. It's all through these double touchscreens now. The lower one controls your climate settings. You can like swipe up and down here. You hear some of that feedback, heated, cool seats. You can set up shortcuts and so forth. And then we have the top screen, which runs most of your infotainment things, your setting things. I just have wireless CarPlay whenever I'm in the vehicle here. And we have some physical buttons for your cameras. I can pull up the 360 camera and so forth. The parking assist too, which I'm currently just in a giant random pullout, so that is not going to obviously do anything. And then we have the Audi shifter, pull back, drive, forward for reverse, press that for park, parking brake on off there. Two cup holders that are not the biggest. And storage is one of my complaints on these modern ones. Same thing with my Audi A8. Like, this center console has a wireless charging pad, and there's not that much storage there. So, like, if you want to put your phone there, it does get a little bit hot. That's something I've noticed with the wireless chargers. My iPhone gets a little toasty wireless charging in there. Usually just try to leave it in a cup holder, but storage is not plentiful up here at all. We do have the upgraded B&O sound system there. Side pocket's pretty big. See my water bottle shoved over there. I mentioned the seats, right? Front ones are ventilated, heated, and massage. Very nice massage settings. Close that out, press a little button on the left side, and it pulls up all your different massage settings. Like the same as in my A8, I'm pretty sure. Steering wheel has some perforated leather here, and then smooth leather, S logo. Everything is very familiar in the modern Audis, and as is typical with the S model, just very subtle little touches. It's not a ton over the top. Honestly, even the RS model interior is not a ton of changes. It's mostly just trim stuff, right? The screens are going to be relatively the same. This does have a little sportier looking of a display. You can change virtual cockpit to so many different things, driver assistance stuff, your entertainment, phone, and so forth. But that's a quick tour of the interior up here of the S7. I'll go hop in the back and show you space. So front seat is set to where I would be while driving. Headroom, my head is definitely hitting the top of the roof now. That's what you get for the sportier roof line. And legroom is only decent. So if you want to chauffeur people in the back seat, you may want to upgrade to the A8. The back seat works in a pinch, but this is exactly what it felt like in my previous gen RS7. Just not the most spacious for somebody who's over 6 feet tall. Shorter people, kids, whatever, totally fine. Bunch of USB-C ports, a 12-volt outlet, so that is pretty nice. A little storage net back here. And then, of course, the very practical rear hatch. Whole thing opens up like that. A lot of storage back here. So practicality for the A7, S7, RS7 family definitely beats out the 6 variants. And I also like that there's the cargo cover here to hide what you have back here. A lot of times I park and I just put whatever is valuable in my backpack or my camera in the back, so when it's closed, you can't see back there, because otherwise through this glass you'll be able to see exactly what is in the back. All right, let's take the S7 for a quick dynamic drive. We're starting off in comfort mode. We have drive select, just like all modern Audis. And we're gonna go ahead and toggle down from comfort, auto, dynamic. Air suspension lowers down a little bit. A quick little tunnel. A lot of turbo noise. So as a S7, we have a little bit more sportiness from the driving aspect too. You have upgraded brakes. They come on standard air suspension, which when you change the drive mode in dynamic, it drops it down. Comfort kind of sits in the middle, and you can raise it for convenience when you're going over inclines, driveways, and things like that. All right, let's make some more noise. In dynamic mode, manual. Hear a lot of turbo noise, actually. It's still civilized. It's pretty muted. Nothing as raucous as the RS model. So the same engine in the RS5 definitely, from what I remember, was a little more rowdy feeling. Obviously, you go up into an RS7, RS6. The twin turbo V8 has a whole different type of powerful rumble to it. This is, again, the mid-tier. It just sits in the middle, and it has both sides of the personality. I feel like this generation of the S7 feels closer related to the A7 than the RS7, whereas the previous generation S7 felt closer to the RS7 than the A7, likely because they at least shared a 4-liter twin-turbo V8, whereas now you have twin-turbo V6 versus the twin-turbo V8. It's all 8-speed automatic across the lineup now. Torque converter, the previous gen had a 7-speed dual clutch, whereas the RS7 had the ZF 8-speed automatic, right? But this one, pretty quick shift still. You get some exhaust burbles. Now we're in dynamic mode. Upshifts, downshifts are pretty good, but even in dynamic mode, I'm feeling a lot more body roll than I would like on this road. We have standard air suspension now for the S7. They tune it to be a little sportier, and you can option rear wheel steering and a differential. You get upgraded brakes, so it's a typical S treatment, right? Not as hardcore as an RS model would be, an AMG model, full-out BMW M model would be. It just got some sportier elements. And I think as you go further up the lineup, the more luxury-leaning the sport models tend to be, just due to size and the class of vehicle. So what I mean by that is the S7 is more luxury leaning than the S5, S3, and so forth, right? S3, RS3, little like pocket rockets. The S3 is really a Golf R, right? Shirt underneath there. And then the S5, right? It feels pretty sporty. I loved my B8.5 S4. A little more compact size, definitely more nimble, right? So they didn't have as much of the luxury stuff. Whereas now with the S7, you're based off of the A7 platform, which is an A6 underneath, and you're closer to the big luxury land yacht like an A8 would be. So it's gonna be not as aggressive. But we can still have some fun. Nice little exhaust blip on the upshifts. Whew. Definitely much more body roll than some of the other sportier little cars I've been taking on this road. You get summer tires with the 21-inch wheels, the black optics pack. This one does not have the rear wheel steering or the diff option. It's a pretty well optioned car though. It's definitely still quick, but this still feels more comfortable being a sporty cruiser versus a canyon carver. But that's also true of the RS7, RS6. One of the biggest takeaways I had when I drove the latest generation of this platform was it just felt so much bigger and heavier and isolated. I did not end up replacing my 2016 RS7 with a new generation RS6, RS7 because I wanted something a little more nimble and sportier. And while the new one is fast, filled with tech, it looks awesome, has presence, it's comfortable, it just didn't do it for me as much. And I feel that in this S7 too. I think the previous generation, having a slightly smaller footprint, being a little lighter, was just a little more sporty leaning. As a daily driver, the newer generation is better because you have all the latest tech. This is surprisingly comfortable and isolated. As a daily driver this week, I drove 5 hours round trip on Friday, and while I was tired, I would have been way more tired in something else that wasn't as comfortable, right? I had massage seats. It's very isolated on the freeway. Driver assistance tech is pretty good, but I found this to be a fantastic luxury daily driver. But up here now in like the curvy canyon roads, I feel a lot of the heft and size. Tires are starting to squeal a little bit for mercy. So like the RS5 Sportback would be something that would lean much more sporty. You have the same powertrain essentially and a little bit smaller of a footprint and definitely tuned to be much, much more aggressive. But that's not a detriment on the S7. The S7 is always intended to be the mid-tier one. That's these S models. Now, compared to the A7, is there enough of a delta for you to justify and feel the difference? Well, this is substantially more powerful, so you do get a lot more power, and the sporty touches have always been nice. Does it stand out as much compared to the RS7? Absolutely not, right? It's still relatively subtle in that way. You have to kind of know what you're looking for, especially now you get like the S-Line packages too, and you can make an A7 look fairly similar. But as a daily driver comfort-wise, an A7 is going to get you real, real close. I drove an A7 when it first came out from Michigan all the way down to Florida and back, and I actually kind of fell in love with the new gen. I was like, maybe I just get one of these, or I was thinking about an A6 all-road, right, the little wagon. Like, this is so much daily driver. It checks so many boxes. The tech, the MMI, the comfort, the isolation. It's a fantastic vehicle. The S7 wasn't even out at that point, if I remember correctly, so it wasn't even a consideration. And I have this personal ego dilemma thing. It's ultimately, I think it's just ego, where if there is a higher tier car, I always want to have the highest tier car. And I admit, that is fully ego driven, right? Do I need 600 horsepower in an RS7? Absolutely not. Like, the S7 is plenty quick for almost all situations. But knowing there's a higher tier one, you kind of want it. That's not bad. It definitely feels like it's motivating much more weight than the RS5. Getting pretty good downshifts from that 8-speed auto, playing with the little paddle shifters. Very linear feeling engine. But like, I feel like the exhaust sounds are coming from like 3 miles behind me, right? Just very isolated, quiet. Even in dynamic, it's not gonna get super rowdy. Doesn't feel like it's handling, it's not like cornering flat or anything like that. There's still a good amount of body roll. There we go. But again, I think it suits the personality. Not a sporty canyon carver, just a sportier, luxury, nice looking luxury sedan. I just said luxury twice in one sentence. You can hustle it through these curves. It's doing well up here, but on a really, really tight curvy canyon road, I think it would feel a little more out of its zone. Even in dynamic mode, the steering does feel fairly light. Tires squealing for mercy a little bit. It'll let you hold high RPM. All right, now is when we should have a discussion about the value of the S7 and how the pricing lines up. I think I actually might pull over and look at my notes because I have a lot of numbers written down and my head is not able to store all of them. But I believe the S7 starts at $84,500. When you chuck in the Prestige package like this one has, it's like $92,700. But the Prestige pack comes with a lot of upgrades, like laser headlights. It's just a whole big, long list of things that you get when you go from a Premium Plus to a Prestige. We'll go ahead and just pause right here, and I'm going to look at my notes. So Prestige pack offers a lot of features, $92,700. The thing is, how does it stack up against an A7 pricing and the RS7, right? So the A7 starts at $72,000. So it's an extra 12 grand to go from an A7 to the S7. Is that worth it? Well, the power increase, you get a wholly different engine. It's not like they just tuned up the engine from the A7, right? This is a whole new engine that's shared with the RS5 and the RS4. It's much more sportily tuned overall, and you get a lot more features, the sportier trim, the exhaust tips, things like that, the quad exhaust out back. I would argue that it is worth it to go into an S7 over the A7, especially if you want something that looks and feels a bit sporty, a little more special than your regular A7. The A7's a great car, but the S7 is a bit nicer. But this one here is optioned to $101,425. So it's the Prestige $92,700, and then they checked a bunch more boxes building out this car for $101,000. And I was a little bit surprised at that price point because my A8L, my 2019 A8L, it's stickered for $109 original MSRP, and that's an A8, so it's kind of a class up, right? I wonder how much S8s are these days. Anyways, this one's $101,000. Like, whew, that is pretty pricey. The S6 is $75,500. So you're essentially paying an extra $9,000 to get the S7, and I think that price delta is relatively fixed across the A6 to A7, S6 to S7, RS6 to RS7. Like the RS6 is actually cheaper than the RS7. So to get that swoopy sportback look, you do have to pay an extra $9,000. Is that worth it? Well, that becomes more challenging, right? Because powertrain mechanically wise and interior wise, it'd be the same. You get a little more practicality out back with the sportback, and it looks sportier, right? And that makes it a bit more desirable to some people. I think I would end up going for the S6 and saving the $9,000 unless I was buying the RS model, in which case I'm going RS6 over RS7 without a single doubt. RS6 and RS7, you're getting a bigger price increase, right? So we said A7 to S7 was an extra $12,000, but then to go from an S7 to an RS6 or RS7, that's 125 grand. So that's a lot more money, but it's also a massive increase in performance, power, aggression, everything, although the interior feels essentially the same across them, right? So if you look at how much an RS6, RS7 costs, this is a fantastic deal, but it's nowhere near the same level of aggression and power and performance. What does this compete against? The CLS 53 AMG is the one that I think its closest competitor. That starts at $82,600, right? So right under $83,000, 429 horsepower, 384 pound-feet of torque. this has the CLS beat, although I don't know what's happening to CLS. Mercedes' lineup is getting all kind of wonky. The BMW M850i Grand Coupe gets brought up, but that's kind of also a tier up. That still has a 4.4 twin-turbo V8, 523 horsepower, $106,000 MSRP. But then there's the 840i, that's 90 grand, 3-liter inline-six, 335 horsepower. And then you have the RS5 Sportback within Audi's own lineup. That's like $80,000. And, oh, a Cybertruck. Cybertruck in the canyons. I drove a Cybertruck in the canyons yesterday. It wasn't that enjoyable, actually. Let's let the transmission do its own thing in S3. When you're in dynamic, transmission goes into sport mode. So the RS5 Sportback honestly might be my biggest holdback. It's not going to be anywhere as luxurious or comfortable or floaty. It's pretty firm, but it's going to be much more aggressive looking because it's an RS model. It'll drive much better like in these curvy canyon roads. So that's something that I probably would crush up within the Audi lineup. I did think about getting an RS5 Sportback as my daily driver all-around car. Like, that became almost more appealing than the latest gen RS6, RS7, based on price and size and fueling, right? If I had unlimited silly funds, I'd be daily driving an RS6 Avant right now, no hesitation. I can promise you that. Although, maybe an S8. One of those two, right? The top twin-turbo V8 Audis, I love them. Do I miss the twin-turbo V8 in the S7? A bit. That twin-turbo V8 had issues. Turbo oil screen, right? It was a problem on the S6, S7 with a 4-liter. Do I think that this is a great daily driver? Absolutely. More so than a sporty all-in-one car. I still stick with I think the smaller S models bring more sportiness relative to their counterpart A models. But the refinement, luxury, interior tech is undeniable on this. I genuinely think this thing does a quite good impression of my A8L, which is not what I expected. I did not expect that. I put it in comfort mode, turned on my massage seats, cruising on the freeway, and I was like, whoa. This has the upgraded Bang & Olufsen sound system. It's got pretty much the same front end here. It's just carbon fiber in front of my black, glossy black wood trim, right? And then you can come up in the canyons, have a little bit of fun. Not too much fun, because it's still a bigger, floatier sedan. So there we go, some quick thoughts on a little dynamic drive with the 2024 Audi S7.